1. The Alphabet Killer. Active years 1971 to 1973. Confirmed victims 3. The alphabet killings, often referred to as the double initial murders, are an unsolved string of child homicides that took place in Rochester, New York between 1971 and 1973. The 3 victims were all 10 or 11-year-old girls whose last name started with the same letter as their first name. Before their bodies were dumped in or near Rochester, each victim had been sexually assaulted and killed by manual or ligature strangulation. Despite the FBI's involvement and extensive forensic investigation, the case has yet to be solved. No one has been conclusively connected to the killings, despite the emergence of several suspects over the years, including a convicted killer and a known pedophile. While some experts argue the pattern was coincidence, others think numerous offenders were involved. Even though the killing stopped in 1973, Rochester is still troubled by the event. 2. The Stoneman Killer. Active years 1989 to 1990. Confirmed victims 13+. The Stoneman Killer, responsible for one of India's most enigmatic serial killings, terrorized Kolkata between 1989 and 1990, brutally bludgeoning at least 13 homeless individuals as they were sleeping on the streets. The first signs of a serial offender targeting destitute rag pickers and beggars in India appeared in Mumbai in 1985. Over a 2-year period, 12 murders happened in the Sion and King Circle areas. The attacker used an inhumane tactic, crushing victims with a big stone while each slept alone in an isolated region. The majority of victims went unidentified, keeping the murders out of the public eye. Following the 6th murder, police finally identified a pattern. A homeless waiter escaped an attack but was unable to describe his attacker. The killings abruptly ceased in 1988. In 1989, similar killings began in Calcutta. 12 pedestrians were murdered over the course of 6 months, most of them near Howrah Bridge. The murderer used hefty stones, implying a powerful male culprit. Despite police patrols and arrests, no clear leads materialized. The killings ended after several detentions, but the suspects were freed owing to a lack of proof. Both cases are unsolved, leaving the Stoneman crimes in deep unanswered mystery. 3. Servant Girl Annihilator. Active years 1884 to 1885. Confirmed victims 8+. The Servant Girl Annihilator, also known as the Midnight Assassin, was an unnamed American serial offender who targeted the city of Austin, Texas in 1884 and 1885. O. Henry, a novelist, used the term Servant Girl Annihilator to pique interest among people and media. Other contemporary publications also referred to the 8-axe killings as the Servant Girl killings. The New York Times claimed on December 26, 1885, that the murders were committed by some cunning madman who is insane on the subject of killing women. According to Texas Monthly, the killer slaughtered 7 women. Furthermore, the killer extremely injured 6 other women and 2 men. All of the victims were attacked indoors while sleeping in their beds. 5 of the ladies were carried, unconscious but still alive, before executed. 3 of the women were horribly mutilated while outside. All of the victims were displayed in a similar manner. Strangely, a sharp object had been inserted into the ears of 6 victims. Despite countless arrests, including black laborers and a rich businessman, no one has ever been convicted. Some beliefs propose that the Annihilator relocated to London and became Jack the Ripper. Others say he was killed or institutionalized before disclosing his identity. 4. The Doodler. Active years 1974 to 1975. Confirmed victims 5. Alleged victims 14+. The Doodler is an unnamed serial attacker suspected to have committed 6 to 16 murders and 3 attacks on males in San Francisco, California between January 1974 and September 1975. The suspect was characterized as a black male between the ages of 19 and 25. He was around 6 feet tall and had a slim physique. The term the Doodler was acquired because the offender would draw his victims before stabbing them to death. The perpetrator met his victims in homosexual pubs, nightclubs, and restaurants. Several victims were stabbed in the front and rear of their bodies in comparable spots. Each of the victims was a white male. Police believed that all the victims died after encountering the suspect near the locations where their bodies were discovered. The San Francisco Police Department has an open and ongoing case. Recent advances in DNA technology in the decades following the crimes have prompted authorities to re-examine evidence in the case. 5. The Butcher of Mons. Active years 1996 to 1997. Confirmed victims 5. Alleged victims 10 plus. The Butcher of Mons is an unnamed serial attacker who is thought to have murdered at least 6 women in or near Mons, Belgium between January 1996 and July 1997. The victims' bodies were dismembered using anatomical expertise, with various body parts left in neatly tied bags. The killing sent shockwaves through Belgium in the late 1990s. The victims, thought to be sex workers, had been expertly dismembered, with some parts never found. There were no traces of sexual assault, indicating that the perpetrator was motivated only by sadism. Despite intensive forensic examinations, no clear lead surfaced. Some attributed this killer to Belgium's most notorious criminal, Marc Dutroux, although there was no clear proof linking the two. The case fell cold in 1997 with no further findings or known attacks. Some believed that the butcher died, moved away, or was imprisoned for a separate crime. While he taunted the authorities with his butcher bags, another serial killer on the opposite side of the world, the Zodiac Killer, left his own horrifying mark on history through his peculiar cryptic messages. 6. The Zodiac Killer. Active years 1968 to 1969. Confirmed victims 5. Alleged victims 30 plus. Between December 1968 and October 1969, an unnamed serial offender known as the Zodiac Killer ended 5 known victims in the San Francisco Bay Area. Known as one of the most famous unsolved murder cases in American history, the case has influenced popular culture and served as a focal point for amateur investigations. Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city and county of San Francisco were the primary locations of the Zodiac's reported attacks. According to verified accounts, he assaulted a male taxi driver and 3 young couples. Of these victims, 2 made it out alive. Interestingly, he addressed himself as the Zodiac Killer in a series of letters to local newspapers, threatening explosions and killing sprees if they did not catch him soon. In his final verified letter in 1974, the killer listed a total of 37 victims. Southern California victims like Sherry Jo Bates, who was killed in Riverside in 1966, were included in this list. Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender who passed away in 1992, was the only suspect police have named, despite several ideas on the identity of the killer. Due to the case's unusualness, there has been ongoing worldwide attention throughout the years. The case was declared inactive by the San Francisco Police Department in 2004, although it was reopened before 2007. 7. The Monster of Florence. Active years 1968 to 1985. Confirmed victims 16. The Monster of Florence was a recognized serial offender who operated in the metropolitan city of Florence, Italy, between the years 1968 and 1985. The monster slaughtered 16 people, mostly young lovers seeking intimacy in woodland regions during new moons. Several related individuals have been convicted of involvement in the killings, but the actual sequence of events, the identity of the real player, and the motivations remain unknown. Over the course of several years, law enforcement investigated the instances on multiple occasions. In 2000, 2 people were convicted of 4 double killings. They had been charged with being part of an alleged group of murderers known in the popular press as the Snack Buddies, after one of the suspects protested in court that the group was simply friends who frequently consumed snacks together in local bars and restaurants. The killings were carried out with a variety of weapons, including a .22 caliber Beretta handgun and a knife, and in half of the instances, a considerable amount of the skin around sexual organs was removed from the female victims' corpses. The attacks, which lasted over 2 decades, sparked one of Italy's most extensive investigations, with over 100,000 individuals interviewed. Theory centered on a satanic cult, a network of conspirators, or a single, careful predator. Several individuals were detained, including Pietro Pacciani, a farmer with a violent history, but suspicions about his involvement remained. Some believe the true monster was never apprehended, while others feel a strong cover-up kept the truth hidden. The killings abruptly ended in 1985, leaving more questions than answers. The story remains one of Italy's most legendary mysteries, generating books and films such as Thomas Harris's Hannibal. 8. The Phantom Killer. Active years 1946. Confirmed victims 5. Alleged victims 8+. The Texarkana Moonlight Killings, attributed to the Phantom Killer, were a series of 4 unsolved murders and other violent crimes committed in the Texarkana region of the United States in early 1946. This culprit is accused of assaulting 8 individuals, 5 of whom died over a 10-week period. From February 22nd to May 3rd, the attacks took place at night on weekends, primarily targeting couples. The first 3 attacks were on lovers' lanes or calm stretches of road in Texas, while the 4th occurred at a remote farmhouse in Arkansas. Several newspapers reported on the killings both nationally and internationally, causing alarm in Texarkana throughout the summer. Residents armed themselves and locked themselves inside at dark, while police patrolled the streets and neighborhoods. Stores ran out of weapons, ammo, locks, and other defensive equipment. The killings were investigated at the local, county, state, and federal levels. Over the course of 10 weeks, 5 individuals were killed and 3 others were wounded, terrifying the whole community. The killer's attack sparked widespread panic, prompting locals to lock their doors and arm themselves. The chief suspect, Ewell Swinney, was caught for unrelated offenses, but there was insufficient evidence to prosecute him with the killings.
My aunt was not only hit over the head with a rock, but she was killed in the same manner that Cindy was killed, which was eviscerated, disemboweled, strangled, stabbed.
These murders inspired the horror film The Town That Dreaded Sundown, establishing his reputation as one of America's most terrifying unsolved killers. 9. The Severed Leg Killer. Active years 2000 to 2001. Confirmed victims 8. Alleged victims unknown. Between 2000 and 2001, the Severed Leg Killer plagued Istanbul, killing 8 people, 6 women and 2 men, and left severed legs all around the city. Only one victim, Yasmin Durgun, aged 17, was recognized. The severed legs were generally well-groomed, some with painted nails, and discovered in public areas, implying that the perpetrator craved attention and terror. Psychological profiling indicates that he was an organized, sexually driven killer who originally targeted prostitutes before moving on to random victims. Another viewpoint says they were done for human organ trafficking. The murderer most likely dissected the remains into 6 sections and disposed of them individually to avoid complete identification. Some male victims were believed to have had intimate relationships with the female victims. The crime remains unresolved, and with the statute of limitations expired in 2021, the killer may never be apprehended.